Welcome to Channel's Business Globe with me, Juliana Olayinka, reporting from just outside the Palace of Westminster in central London. Coming up on today's show, Nigel Farage has unveiled his toughest immigration plan yet, promising mass deportations, daily flights, and even repealing the Human Rights Act. His proposal has ignited fierce debate from Westminster to social media. I'll be speaking to our Downing Street correspondent Simon Pusey on what this could mean for Britain's migration system and for politics at the highest level. And
I trust in God, I know He cares for me.
She's been hailed as one of the brightest new voices in British classical music. Nigerian-born soprano Francesca Chijena stunned audiences at the proms last weekend and is now being celebrated as a rising star on the global stage. I'll be sitting down with her at London's Blackheath Halls to talk about her journey, her Nigerian roots, and what it takes to thrive in the world of opera. Then later, as September ushers in new beginnings and fresh challenges, from back to school to career transitions, we're asking how we can lead ourselves through seasons of change. I'll be speaking with award-winning coach and author Obi James about self-leadership, resilience, and navigating disappointment in uncertain times. But first, Britain's immigration debate has reached a new flashpoint. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has announced a plan to deport up to 600,000 asylum seekers arriving by small boats. The controversial blueprint includes scrapping key human rights protections, staging up to 5 deportation flights a day, and even negotiating removals with regimes in Afghanistan and Iran. Farage framed the policy as a response to what he calls an invasion, arguing the cost of housing asylum seekers, billions of pounds a year, has become unsustainable. The reaction has been swift and polarised. Lib Dem leader Ed Davey accused Farage of echoing Vladimir Putin, while Conservative MP Jacob Rees-Mogg suggested the plan could trigger a constitutional showdown with the establishment. Online, Elon Musk dismissed Farage as a weak source and threw his support behind rival party Advanced UK. With record numbers of small boat arrivals this year, the pressure on government policy is mounting and protests continue, including the arrest of writer Paul Laverty over a pro-Palestine t-shirt deemed supportive of a banned group. So what happens next, and how seriously is Westminster taking Farage's challenge? I put those questions and more to our Downing Street correspondent Simon Pusey. Former UKIP leader, now leader of Reform, gave quite a huge speech earlier this week. I know that most of the major broadcasters in the UK carried it live. That just goes to show just how important Reform are to the political makeup of the country. Quite controversial in some points, but in some parts, he was speaking to the crowd, saying that he's going to be able to stop the boats and deport hundreds of thousands of migrants. Do you believe him?
Yeah, well, this is Reform UK exactly putting meat on the bones of ideas that they've been talking about, and they're giving actual figures. So they're saying we're going to build facilities that can house 24,000 people in the first year that they would be in government. And then over the lifetime of a parliament, so 4 or 5 years, they would have between 500 and 600,000 people being deported back to countries like Afghanistan. And they're talking about the way they're going to do this would be to strike deals with them. And they would
like a Rwanda scheme.
UK leverage in terms of we will not give you charity and we will not give you aid if you do not take these people back. I think the problem with all of this when it comes to Nigel Farage and people who have mainly come from UKIP who are now in Reform UK is that everything is so simple. Everything is so simple in their terms. Actually going to the nitty-gritty of trying to do this.
Policy.
And we've seen various Conservative governments try to do this in the past, haven't we? Where this has been an issue for them as well. And it's an issue for Labour as well. Smash the gangs. The problem is when you're in government, it's so much harder. But Nigel Farage doesn't seem to operate like that. He is a campaigner. And he's striking the mood of the country in at the moment. But it was signed by Tony Blair many years ago, which has huge minutiae and huge consequences just to tear that up and start again. You know, so it's a good headline at one point. But then when you get down to the nitty gritty, it's actually incredibly hard to even conceive about doing anything like that. the way that he just sort of will flap his arms and say, this is a problem, this is how we'll sort it.
Well, he's trying to appeal to the taxpayer. And at the moment, it appears as if, the vast majority of the taxpayer are not happy. They feel like they're not being listened to.
Absolutely.
And that their shores are being invaded. He repeated those controversial words.
Well, I think that's easy to do, isn't it? When you've got people who, for many reasons, not just because they see illegal migrants everywhere, but
because they're racist.
Because their inflation is going up, or because the NHS waiting list is still too high and there's not enough housing, and there's so many other things. But Nigel Farage has done what he does so well in pinpointing this very visible, very visual thing which gets people angry, which is people who are here illegally being put up in nice hotels. And remember, he did this with
and potentially sexually harassing young children as well.
Another thing, but leaving the EU. He did that so well with leaving the EU. Remember how many promises he said it was going to be so easy and everything was going to be so much better. And all the people who voted for him then are probably going to vote for him now. And again, it's a different portion of people not from this country who he is putting the problems down to. And I think there's a big difference between being a campaigner and pointing to some people that don't look like us and saying that's their problem, and actually running the country. And I think the next election, they're doing very well in the polls at the moment. I think there's also quite a lot, there's something quite dangerous about talking about civil unrest and saying that he said the last thing we want is civil unrest. I actually think the first thing Reform UK wants is civil unrest, because when that happens, they get a huge boom. They got that at Southport. And I think it's quite dangerous to be talking about that as if this is a reason why we need to implement new policies, new laws, because we're a democracy. That's what happens. That we have a not that some vigilante thing that we're worried about may be happening. Therefore, we need to suddenly do these new things.
I think the important term is democracy, because, of course, in a functioning democracy, which we have in the UK, all voices must be heard. And I think for many people who sort of find comfort in some of Farage's rhetoric, I do believe that finally somebody's listening to them. That is going to be difficult, though, isn't it, for Sir Keir Starmer? Because again, as we know, of course, not all migrants, not all illegal migrants, not all people of colour are criminals and do deserve a home. But yet, of course, you do want the British culture to be nourished and championed and looked after. How is he going to get his way through this?
Well, I think it's been, as we've seen through various Conservative governments and the current one, it's very hard. And it just is a lot harder than Nigel Farage makes it sound.
Yeah.
But because he is such a good speaker and charismatic, and he gets to the nub of the point, and he likes a beer and he likes a fag, he appeals to the working person, and they look at him and they think, like happened with the EU, they think this is our map.
It's enough,
and it's just another easy way out.
Now, away from politics, one of the brightest voices to emerge from the UK classical music scene this year is Nigerian-born soprano Francesca Chiejina. Fresh from her standout performance at the Proms last weekend, she is being hailed as a jewel of the nation and a rising star on the global stage. Her journey speaks not just to artistry, but also to discipline, resilience, and the business of culture. A reminder that talent, when nurtured, can become a powerful export for both the UK and Nigeria. I sat down with Francesca at London's Blackheath Halls to talk about her career, her Nigerian roots, and what it takes to thrive in one of the world's most competitive industries. Congratulations on your recent performance at the Proms. Honestly, I was listening to you on the way in the Uber, and you almost brought tears to my eyes. Just talk to me about what last weekend's moment meant for you, both professionally and personally.
Oh, well, I mean, I can't take all the credit for making you cry. Goretzky wrote a hell of a piece. I mean, that piece is, I think it's still the highest selling piece of classical music, over millions. And this was in 91 when Don Opshaw recorded it. So I think
it was an honor.
I mean,
beyond,
honestly. And I've been lucky to perform this piece since 2017. So by the time I got to it at the Proms, it's in my body. I can sing it in my sleep. My whole family was there, 5,000 people in the audience.
How many standing ovations? Come on.
A bit greedy with 3. But you could hear a pin drop at moments. And I just thought haven't felt that kind of atmosphere anywhere. And obviously, big ups to the piece. The piece is almost like worshipped in the classical music community. And I was just like blessed to be the one presenting it. I think the last time they did it at the Proms was 2013. So I'm just happy to be here.
Talk to me about how you got here. And for many people, they won't realize that you are quite rare. It's not many Blacks, many Nigerians that get to feature at the Proms. How did you make that journey?
There are not many Blacks, but there's a few. We're coming up, and I'm amongst the numbers. We are few, but we're coming up. Blackheath Halls, specifically about this building and this community, they gave me my first professional gig back in 2015. So I have a long history with this hall, and but the longer history with classical music is my father put us, me, my two brothers, and my little sister in music lessons back at the Muzon Center.
Quite typical for Nigerians, yeah.
Well, exactly.
You have to have a curriculum activity extra.
Exactly. And for some reason, I think I'm musically inclined as an African, and also growing up in a house where my dad blasted Motown all Saturday. So I took to it like immediately, and it's the thing that kept coming up in my life, music as a form of like self-soothing. And here we go, having a career in it. I never would have thought that this would be what I was doing. The only reason I'm here is because of my huge team. I have 2 voice teachers, I have coaches, I have 2 agents. Like, I have an accountant who keeps my money together. And and more importantly, like, it was all the funding when I was going to school, all the funding for music education. I got a lot of scholarships that I think I probably would have ended up doing something else if I didn't have someone donating to the universities to give people with potential a go at said potential. So I think I would say 50% of the reason I'm still singing and doing this for a living exclusively is the support for the arts.
When you're on stage and you've got 5,000 people in front of you, do you ever think, oh my gosh, do you ever think about Nigeria, where you come from, or, those few faces in the crowd that resemble you?
Yeah, if I start to think about it too deep, it's a lot of pressure.
Too weighty.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure. So like I tend to try and focus on, I always say this and it's so cliche, but like I tend to focus on like being really focused on being good at the thing.
Yeah.
And then
being an expert.
Yes, as much, like sacrificing, putting in the hours. And then naturally you draw in people because like you just as a human being are just naturally attracted to excellence. Yeah. It's very attractive. So that's my focus. And of course, you become like foisted into this position of leadership. Here's a song I sing when I'm feeling a bit of like emotional turbulence and I just need serenity and assurance. It's I Trust in God. I trust in God wherever I may be, upon the land or on the rolling sea. Oh, come what may, from day to day, my Heavenly Father watches over me. I trust in God, I know He cares for me, on mountain peak or on the rolling sea. The billows rolling feeds my soul. My Heavenly Father watches over me.
Coming up on Channel Business Global, as September ushers in new beginnings and fresh challenges, From back to school to career transitions, we're asking how we can lead ourselves through seasons of change. I'll be speaking with award-winning coach and author Obi James about self-leadership, resilience, and navigating disappointment in uncertain times. And as usual, I'll be looking back at some of the biggest business news stories of the week. All of this after the break. Do stay with us. Welcome back to Channel's Business Global with me, Juliana Olayinka, reporting from just outside the Palace of Westminster in central London. In a moment, I'll be catching up with award-winning coach and author Obi James. But until then, here's a breakdown of some of the biggest business news stories of the week. Nigeria and Brazil have deepened their economic ties with the signing of 5 major bilateral agreements during President Bola Tinubu's state visit to Brazil this week. The deals include a new air services agreement enabling direct Lagos-Sao Paulo flights, expanded cooperation on agriculture and food security, and the return of Petrobras to Nigeria's oil sector. Officials say the agreements are set to boost trade, create jobs, and open fresh opportunities for private sector investment across both countries. Millions of UK households face higher than anticipated energy bills this winter, as Ofgem announced a 2% rise in the price cap from October. A typical household will now pay £1,755 a year, up £35 on the current level. Campaigners warn this will mean another difficult winter, with many families already struggling with rising grocery costs. The government says expanded support through the Warm Home discount will ease the burden for the most vulnerable. A steep 50% US tariff on Indian goods came into force on Wednesday, escalating trade tensions between Washington and New Delhi. President Donald Trump has targeted India over its imports of Russian oil and weapons, while Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has urged his country to embrace Made in India self-reliance. Analysts warn the tariffs could hurt millions of export-driven jobs in India, though Modi has promised sweeping tax cuts to cushion households and businesses. And now to our final story. As the summer draws to a close, households and businesses alike are bracing for a season of transition. September often marks new beginnings, from children heading back to school and students to starting university, to professionals returning to work with fresh challenges. But this period can also bring uncertainty, career shifts, and difficult choices. It's against this backdrop that questions of self-leadership and reliance come sharply into focus. How do we navigate change, manage disappointment, and find purpose when the path already feels uncertain? To explore these themes, I was earlier joined by Obi James, who is an award-winning coach and the author of Let Go Leadership. As we continue a conversation we began last year about what it truly means to lead ourselves first. Obi James, hello. It is such a pleasure having you back once again on Channel's Business Global. It's been about a year since we last spoke. I think it was sort of New Year's resolutions. Yeah. And it's that time of the year again, as you can see with the wind. I know. It's a gear change. Yeah. A lot of people putting their kids back to school or starting new courses or just in a general change, a sort of career path. Yeah. What sort of advice would you give to people who are feeling as if it's time to let go and embrace something new at this time of the year?
It's a very interesting time of the year, isn't it? Because we're coming into September. Yeah. We've gone through the mid-year part of those bar months. Yes, exactly. And then you've had the summer break. And I think it's generally a time for reflection for a lot of people. People tend to get into September realizing that time's flying and it's only a matter of time before Christmas and the year's out. So I think in terms of Let Go Leadership, I think that there is something about checking in with yourselves right now to have a think about what were your intentions at the start of this year, how far you've come with them, and actually where do you need to kind of juggle things a little bit, maybe shift a few things, and it's home run for the year, right? It's so. What story do you want to tell about 2025? Absolutely everything.
There's so much information out there. In fact, sometimes I feel like there's an abundance of information, almost too much. Yeah. Everybody's writing down their to-do lists. In fact, you can write down the same to-do list every hour, and you never get anything done. But as you said, we're at that transitional period. What are the kind of practical things that you can do at this time of the year to plan to finally winter?
I think in addition to checking in with how far you've come, I think there's something about self-compassion that is really important at this time of the year. People are tired and and people are overwhelmed. And there's so much going on around climate change. AI is a huge thing at the moment, and I think it's feeding a level of overwhelm for people where they're almost shutting down rather than thinking about actually what's the way forward. So it might be that you could start to rethink your goals for this year. Think about, are there things I need to shift, and what must I absolutely achieve by the end of this year? What do I need to let go of so that I do really well in the things that I do choose to do, as opposed to carried on trying to do it all, which we tend to fall into.
Absolutely. How can you check the temperature, Obi? Because of course we know there's a lot of us don't want to get up out of bed in the morning. Yeah. It doesn't mean because you sort of tap your alarm 5 times in a row that you don't love your job, right? How are you able to decipher whether or not you hate your job and it's time for a change, or whether or not you're just in a rut?
I always go back to values. I think a lot of us come into the work that we do and just somewhat fall into it, and then we go with the flow. I often compare it to being on Oxford Street and going with the tourists and being shoved into a shop that you had no intention of going into. And I think there's something about stepping back a little bit and being intentional about, what are my values? And is this role or is this job or is this organization allowing me to live and honor those values? And if it's not, where do I need to make some changes? And it's a crucial thing for us because, this whole, especially, I'm going to think about Nigeria as an example. I think lots of us go into careers that we were kind of engineered. and you do get engineered by an engineer. A doctor, a lawyer, an accountant.
We did well, didn't we?
We've done well. And it's taken some, hard conversations and really standing up for yourself.
Yeah.
And I do think that as you get older, you start to think about what fulfillment looks like for you. And for you to be truly fulfilled, your values have to be honored in the work that you do.
Yeah.
So it's less about trying to fit into the roles and places you found yourself, and actually stepping back a little bit and thinking, who am I? And actually what works for me? And how would I be fulfilled? And what would make me happy? And what are those careers that I need to be considering or roles I need to be considering? They're tough conversations and they're tough reflections. And it's not just your work, it's everything. It's with relationships, it's with, countries where you live, whatever it might be. There's some soul searching that needs to be had and some reconnection with self, I think, before you start on that journey of change and transition.
That's why I want to talk about perception. You mentioned AI. Obviously, we've got to talk about social media. It can be quite distorting. You see really glossy pictures.
Yes.
A lot of them have been filtered.
Yes.
No, we have no problem with the filter, but it's not exactly what people see. And I think sometimes for a lot of leaders, CEO types, they can be in these really powerful positions. But it's quite lonely. But people wouldn't think it's lonely. Talk to me about how people can navigate that loneliness, maybe joining networking communities. I know Michelle Obama spoke a lot about how her large network of friends helped her during her down days in the White House. Is having a good network great? And how do you think people can get into networks, especially if they're quite shy on that, but even if they are CEOs?
I think it's such a crucial thing for us to consider. CEO loneliness is real.
Wow.
There's a lot. I coach a lot of executives, and actually one thing that keeps coming back is the loneliness. Where do I go to? Where do I take my real self and my real concerns and my real challenges? Because social media makes it look like everyone's doing amazing.
You're always busy. You're at every party.
Exactly, but it's more about actually how happy am I? And we all put up that kind of smiley face and everyone's trying to keep up with the Joneses. So I think the higher up you go, the lonelier it gets, unfortunately. And the networks are really important. And I also think it's about having the right network. Yeah. So a network doesn't have to be going out and partying and having
constant
fun
socializing,
out and getting tired from networking. I think it's about having your core set of friends. And oftentimes you find those people where your values are aligned. The people that you can really sit down with and say, look, I'm really struggling. I'm not sure this is the right place for me. Or I'm not sure I'm doing the right thing for my team, or I need help and the expectations are too much. And as it's, you've rightfully touched on, AI is overwhelming. How do I navigate this? And where do you take all these worries and vulnerability to? And I think that's the biggest thing. It's the vulnerability of loneliness that then kind of gets higher as you get older. There's a need as you get more senior to bring that vulnerability out and not to kind of shut down and then be on your own.
Snapping.
And then there's the impact on others, but also impact on your mental health. Absolutely.
Well, sadly, that's all we have time for today. But as always, do get in touch with your comments and suggestions. I'll see you at the same time next week for more in-depth business analysis on Channel's Business Global. Goodbye.